We grew up in a world that told us who to be, what to believe, and who to fear.
A world where questioning was dangerous and leaving was unthinkable. But we did. I'm Malaya.
And I'm Rebecca. Welcome to the Sister Act, a real story of faith, freedom,
And the culture shock of navigating life on the outside. Welcome to the Sister Act. This is actually season 1, episode 1, original OG. Here we go.
the kickoff party,
Yeah.
if you will.
So we're sisters, and we decided to do this just based on our childhood, our experiences, and a really fun project that we're working on together. We have a lot of really good ideas about how we can reach out to people and help people. And so this is kind of just the jump off of our story. So thanks
Yeah.
for joining us. My name's Malaya.
And I'm Rebecca, and we're sisters. So I was born in 1981, and you were born in
1990.
1990. So
Right on the
I'm
cusp.
almost 10 years old, or a little over 10 years older than you.
Yeah, because you were summer, I was fall. So
Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember the day you were born very vividly in the bathroom on the third floor of our house.
Burlington,
But yeah, we grew up very untraditionally. We grew up in a high control, what started out as kind of like a commune in the 70s that turned into more of what you would consider to be a cult today. And so that's really why we're here, is just to kind of talk about that experience and how it shaped us into who we are today. And we have very different stories, right?
Yeah, same family, very, very different experiences.
Very different experiences, kind of different, not generations. We're obviously in the same generation, but when I was, 16 and getting married, that's a good one. That's a good
I
story.
think I was like 6 or 7, maybe. I was 6.
Yeah, you were
'Cause I
6.
was your flower girl or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So obviously the wedding was weird and different, and I was 16.
We got to back up a little bit.
Yeah, but just, there's a lot that went into who we are today with our past experience. So I'm just excited to get into that with you.
Dive in. All right. Do you want to start from the beginning? Tell them about mom and dad
Yeah.
and their
Yeah.
reason for joining and all that.
Yeah. So we'll have to talk to them at some point.
Yeah.
On our
they'll be on the
podcast.
show.
Yeah.
At some point.
They'll be on the show. But they joined back in 79, 78, I want to say.
Yeah.
So they...
Sarah was a baby, right?
She was pregnant with
She's
Sarah.
pregnant with Sarah. Okay.
So there's 8 kids in our family. Whoops. There's 8 kids in our family, and she was pregnant with kid number 3, and I'm number 4. So when they were living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, they had moved there. They were kind of searching, like they wanted to find, a way of life that was good for their children.
Purpose, more
family oriented. How does God fit into that? And there
it was also during the hippie movement too, where there was a lot of these things that were around and popping up. I think that they were just kind of looking for something that fit them best. And, dad wanting to become like a family man and more focused on his daughters and kind of a simpler way of life. And that's kind of what drove them to even be introduced to this in the first place.
And I think there was an element of like wanting to save their marriage, and keep their family together.
Mm-hmm.
We can let them tell that part, but yeah, I think it was just a kind of happenstance. Dad was out, maybe he was an outside salesman, restaurant equipment, I believe, and stopped into the Yellow Deli in downtown Chattanooga.
Still there.
He was waited on by a sweet, wonderful lady named Mary Wiseman, who came back into my life in a way many years later. But he's just kind of like, what is this? And she explained it to him, and they started coming around and thinking like, is this what we've been looking for? But we won't get into obviously
a lot of
that, but that's kind of what drew them into it. And then over the years, obviously, when you have a group of people that you're trying to develop into a message or, be the people of Christ,
Well, the
obviously.
whole premise behind it is very back to like the original apostles. So,
Right.
sharing all things in common. It's a group called the 12 Tribes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that we'll dive into that more
Yeah.
eventually, but the premise behind it was very like communal living, like the
Yeah, help each
early days of
other,
the
be
apostles,
there
right?
for each
Yeah.
other.
A community, if you will.
And but what it grew into really is a high control group.
Right.
And I think you see that a lot of times with these kind of movements, if you will, where they start out as one thing, but then over time, we have to keep people into it. We
Right. So
have to
you have to control.
you
You have
have
to
to
control the
control the
narrative. Right.
narrative, right? So you have to um that they obviously went into homeschooling. They quit going to churches and started their own churches. They started living communally, so everybody's living in the same household, sharing the same kitchen, eating meals
Sharing all things in
together,
common.
sharing all things in common, like in Acts 3. So eventually, our parents decided to join, and the rest is history.
When did you, because you were born in Island Pond, right? So you didn't even live in Chattanooga when they were there with the girls.
No, so mom gave birth to Sarah. They had joined, but they weren't living
Right.
with the group because at
Because they
that
were still on the
point
farm, right?
they were still on the
And
farm
we just went back there actually a couple
in
of years
Chattanooga
ago.
where our
Yeah, in
parents lived.
Chattanooga to the original farm where our parents lived.
Yeah,
Because my grandmother passed away, unfortunately, was it a couple years 2 years ago?
yeah.
3 years ago? So we had a little memorial service for her there with like her relatives and
It was
everything. But yeah.
Wildwood, Georgia, so it was a little
Right.
outside
Yeah.
of Chattanooga.
But yeah.
So actually, this was when they were migrating to
Island Pond.
Island
Yeah.
Pond, Vermont. Mom gave birth to Sarah. They had joined, gotten baptized, but they didn't live with the community in their households.
Right.
And then everybody moved up to Vermont. So they basically had a migration. They felt rejected from Chattanooga, Tennessee,
Well, I
and
think
they
that they had
left.
people join that had like farms and real estate and stuff up in Island Pond. So they made the
Yes.
decision of like moving a lot of the people up there because it was an opportunity for them since new members joining there actually had like assets that would fit that size of
Right. So they
a
did
group of
find a
people.
little
Yeah.
group of people, some of them are relatives,
Yeah.
that were kind of trying to do the same
Similar.
thing.
Yeah.
And the guy who started it and his wife were kind of, the leaders, if you will, and decided, everybody's going to move up to Vermont and merge. And then I was born, I believe that was in 79 that everybody
That
moved up
everyone
because
moved.
Sarah was just a
She
few
was a
months
baby.
old.
Yeah.
I think like 3 months old.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So on this journey,
Right.
like up north in the middle
From
of
like
winter.
from
Yeah.
Tennessee to like northern Vermont.
Northern
Yeah.
Vermont, like 20 miles from the border
Yeah,
of
of Canada.
Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was born in 1981.
Which house were you born in?
I was born in, oh gosh, I can't,
Do you not remember?
Bellevue.
I don't even know
Wait.
I'm not sure where that was. So they had what, 5 houses there and
So
2
yeah, Island
businesses?
Pond was just
Yeah.
a tiny village, basically.
Tiny.
Tiny.
It's like a one there isn't even a red light. There's a red flashing
I
light
think
in the
it's a
middle
yellow
of town.
flashing
Yeah.
light. I don't even think
Okay.
you have to stop.
There isn't even it's not even a
No.
one red light town. Yeah.
And it's basically frozen for
Yeah.
8 months out of the year. And the group owned a big, well, I bet it wasn't even that big, the block downtown. But to
It was
to
I mean,
us as
it was a
it was the
commercial
largest
space. Yeah.
building in town, and it
Yeah.
was this 3-story building. We had a restaurant on the bottom. There was conference rooms on the second floor, and then training rooms, which
Yeah.
was school for us, homeschooling, and the celebration room
Yeah.
on the third floor.
Gathering rooms. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was houses scattered all around like this
Weren't there
town.
5 or 6 of them or something like that or 4?
Oh no, there was like 14
Oh, okay. I
at,
didn't live to the party.
at the height of
Right.
it. Not in 1981, but at the height. So
I mean, they took over this town. Like you couldn't walk through the town without seeing like
Yeah.
a lot of them out. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
and again, the sharing all things in common. Like you don't have your own car or anything like that. So a lot of
Exactly.
the time, how they got to like down to work at the communal businesses and
Walking.
stuff. Everyone walked. Everyone walked through
In
town. So it was
blizzard.
very obvious.
Yeah.
Like it was very very obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one and these are my like earliest memories, like before Canada, before Nova Scotia. We there was one, it was either like Thanksgiving or maybe we were still kind of celebrating Christmas, but in our own way. And they decided a great idea would be for each house to kind of host like an appetizer or a little meal or
Right.
whatever, and then like the families would go from house to house. And so mom and dad have the story of like they have four kids under whatever 10 or 11
Like hauling them through snow
and under below
oh my god.
zero weather,
For like miles too, because
just
it's not
walk
like they were
trudging from
all
house
oh
to
my goodness.
house for hot chocolate. But hot
If it
it
was
was
back then,
it
yeah.
was probably hot chocolate back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get into more of that, by the way. It's just there's a lot of I mean, like we said originally, like
Restrictions.
right, and I
Started out kind of cool
it was
and then it
founded on all the right things,
yeah.
and then it just got more and more and more extreme. So we'll come back to the chocolate thing later, but
Yeah. So, yeah, so that was 1981 and then our family lived there. Obviously, this is years and years before you came in the
yeah,
picture. We lived there until I was gosh, maybe only like 2 or 3, and then we went to Nova
Nova Scotia.
Scotia for a
Yeah,
couple of years while dad helped, refurbish the sailboat,
yeah.
and we lived there for a couple of years.
So a little bit of context on that though. So they were establishing communities, starting to like branch out and
Yes,
establish communities in
because
different
we
locations.
were just in the one
Island Palm.
place in
Yeah,
Vermont, and then they were starting to want to go to other
branch out. Yeah.
locations and other countries.
Right.
Yeah.
So they started kind of a satellite in Canada, and they would start satellite groups and then recruit people to that group. So they would
Right,
have like,
and help them grow.
yeah,
Yeah.
envelop, whatever. I'm totally
Invalids?
no, 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 like when you go and like testify, it starts with an E.
Oh,
Coffee.
evangelize,
Yes.
evangelize. Yes, 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 evangelize. Yeah,
Right.
so that was the purpose
And
of
very, very publicly evangelize. Like they
yeah,
would be on street corners and like hosting events and stuff like that. So
passing out
that's yeah, that's
papers
how they kind of
and
recruited group members in new locations.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was in the early '80s. They were small. There wasn't a lot of controversy. We're up in Island or up in Nova Scotia
Tell them why they sent dad there.
for the boat. Yeah,
Right.
to refurbish that sailboat. But
Right.
why did we need a sailboat?
But I mean, it's still I think there was a vision behind it, but
To
essentially
go from Canada to bring
they were
people?
trying to
Smuggle?
set up not smug. They were trying to set up a
Smuggle
form of
disciples.
transportation. They called it intertribal trading.
Oh,
So instead of
okay.
doing it
Not in
for
the
with like
80s.
buses, oh yeah, they were starting the fleet like back then.
Okay.
And it was literally to bring goods and disciples or whatever. They would
Right.
load a bunch of people on this boat and take it from Vermont to Canada. There's also like a book written about stories of that passage because it's like so crazy.
Oh, I was
It's
on
freezing
many of
cold, but
them.
yeah,
Just
you were.
barfing all
Yeah.
the whole time.
But essentially, what it is if somebody is skilled in the community, because not everyone has the same skills, not everyone had the same background and
Right.
education. My dad is he's a very intelligent man.
Multi-talented,
Exactly. He has a
faceted.
lot of skills. So as a family, when we were growing up, we were shipped around all the time. I mean, like we every 2 or 3 years, like we moved to a different spot because they wanted his skills set
Right.
on a different project or a different thing. So someone had the wild idea of this sailboat. And so my dad had a lot of experience with that. And it's also something that he's very passionate about. So
He was a sailor. Yeah.
yeah, they shipped my family before I was born up to Nova Scotia for him to
Yep.
work on that boat. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was a couple years old. Went up there ahead of mom and the rest of the kids. Me and dad went up for
How
some
old were you
reason.
then?
2, maybe 3. Maybe I was 3
Okay.
because Jesse had been born,
You mean
and he
Dan?
was little. Oh,
Dan.
Yeah, Dan had been born. And he was little. He was a baby,
Okay.
and I'm 2
So
years
mom
older
stood
than
with the
him.
baby.
Yeah, so we went up there, and on June 22nd of
Mhm.
1984, so I was turning 3. That's right, I was turning
Yeah.
3. Mom was not there. She was en route from Vermont to Canada. And it was my 3rd birthday, and this is actually how my book is supposed to open, but it
Right.
was my 3rd birthday, and this is really my first clear memory,
Yeah.
is I'm all excited, it's my 3rd birthday, I have, like, a little pale pink, yellow dress on, whatever, run out to the yard, I'm, like, gonna find dad, it's my birthday, give him a kiss, a hug, and he's, like, sitting solemnly on the
Yeah.
grass with the rest of the brothers, And
Elders.
yeah, yeah, I, like, ran up and I'm like and I could tell right away, like, something very serious was happening.
Yeah.
And that was the day of the
The
raid
raid in
where
Island
they
Palm.
came
Yeah.
and they took all of the children. So the state came
It
and
was an FBI raid
kind of. I
at,
mean,
like,
it was, like,
4 o'clock in the morning or
semi-illegal
something.
and
Oh,
got
it
thrown
definitely
out,
was,
but
yeah.
that was on my birthday, on my 3rd birthday, and we were concerned because, obviously, we didn't have cell phones and all that,
Right.
like, had mom left? Were the kids were was she still there with the baby and the other kids?
Were they
Um
taken? Where were they? Yeah.
Yeah, so we were not a part of the raid. They were en route, so they were not there. But it was on my birthday when I turned 3. Yeah, and then we lived there for a couple of years. We moved back to Island Pond eventually. I was probably 5, and then we lived in Island Pond a couple of years. Michelle was born.
She
Um,
was born there.
she was born there in I remember her birth.
So you, Dan, and Michelle were all born in Island Pond?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Sarah was
I was
Tennessee?
born at the Bellevue. Michelle was born at the Red is it the Red House?
She was born at the Red House, I know that.
And then Dan was born down on the other side of town. Um, I can't remember the exact name of the house, but yeah. And then all of a sudden we were moving to Burlington. And that was in is it 89? You were born in 90?
Mhm.
It's probably
Yeah.
87 or 88.
Yeah.
87, I think we moved to Burlington, Vermont, and we it was just us and one other family. So that was actually cool because we didn't have all this, like, restrict like
The commune restriction,
yeah,
yeah.
like, the rules and the right and the
So it was essentially like another, it
scheduled
was
and
another satellite. So they were going up to set up there, and
exactly.
it wasn't like a full-fledged,
Yeah,
like, commune yet.
and I
And
was
we'll
7
we'll
years
get
old.
into that too as far as, like, traditions and how things are set up and all that too,
Yeah,
but
and
it
then
was Sarah
a
was
few
then.
years later, you were born. But we lived in Burlington for a good chunk of time.
A while,
Yeah.
yeah.
And our dad was very instrumental in helping set up the businesses that
Right.
supported not only that location and that community, but, like, Brazil was
Yeah.
starting up at that point, the location there. And
This was, I feel like this was the '90s were a time when it would just, like, rapidly built. Like, they
it
started,
was very successful.
well,
Yes.
they
As
would
far as
meet.
their businesses, they weren't too weird yet. So
Right.
people thought it was cool and, like,
Concept was great.
yeah,
Yeah.
like homeschooling. And I mean, there was some weirdness with, like, the raid and, like, we had to be careful. Like, I didn't have
Well, because the raid was in the news and papers. It was I
yeah.
think it was international news or national news, not international, national news.
I think
Yeah.
it was international news,
Yeah.
but
And it blew over pretty fast.
but that's why, like,
Yeah.
for example, I didn't have a birth certificate until it
Yeah.
was time for me to get married, and I had to go get one because they were afraid to register the births because they didn't want the
Yeah.
government knowing what kids were there. So if there was a raid,
Yeah.
another one.
So this is actually kind of my name origin, and why, not my name origin, but it's funny, like, the producer that we're working with here, he heard Malaya for the first time yesterday,
Yeah.
was it? And I've obviously known him professionally for 6 years, 5, 6 years, something like that. Um, so from, like, in my family and friends, like, a lot of my family, like, they really don't know the Elizabeth side of it.
Yeah.
So you were already born at that time,
Yep.
during the raid, but the rest of us that came after that, which was Michelle, me, and Jesse, we were all given names at birth, which we were all given Hebrew names. We'll get into that. Um, but my dad put an English name on all of our birth certificates so that if another raid happened again, no one would know who we were.
Because they weren't, like, the weird, funky
Exactly.
Hebrew word
So on my birth
names.
certificate, I
Yeah.
was Elizabeth Clinton, and
Mhm.
I did not know that until I was probably 11 or 12 years old.
Oh,
So
really?
even if
You didn't
somebody
even
asked,
know?
no, because ignorance. Because if someone came in and was like, "Is your name Elizabeth?" I could legitimately be like, "No,
Oh,
it's
that's
not."
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
if someone knocked on
Yeah.
the door and said, "Does an Elizabeth
Yeah.
Clinton live here?" Everyone would just be like, "No, that
Yeah.
person doesn't exist."
So, people probably are wondering, like, why hide the kids?
I mean, yeah, it was a pretty, they essentially thought they had some sort of story or a tip off of there being, like, child abuse or underage
Extra heavy
working. Yeah.
spankings, yeah.
Um and it wasn't entirely credible to the point the whole case was thrown out because they did not have enough evidence supporting to even arrest or take anybody at all, and
Right.
that's why the whole thing got thrown out. But I think my dad was more, of he was just being a lot more protective of us and not and I have to, like, defend this a little bit because and not in, like, a creepy way, it was just more of, um, he didn't want his kids being taken away by a bunch of strangers when
Yeah.
I don't know, it's it
Yeah.
it it made a lot of sense to me. It was more of like a almost like a witness protection for us
Exactly.
at the
Yeah.
time.
So the they were always under scrutiny when we were growing up, the group for um possible child abuse, like the education system was usually
Why aren't your kids in public
scrutinized
school?
because we
Yeah,
didn't we did have a curriculum, a homemade curriculum because they didn't like Halloween being in
right.
textbooks or whatever. There was a lot of
Redacted.
yeah, handwritten.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you get a school book and like half of it's blacked out because it wasn't appropriate. Yeah,
right. So that we were homeschooling, so there was scrutiny on that. They were disciplining, they were using corporal punishment, and they defended that, and they were not shy about that, and
yeah,
because that's what the Bible says to do.
right.
And so
He who spares the rod. Yeah.
yeah, so they had this sense of needing to hide the identities of the children. It seemed like for a while.
It was really scary. I mean, that was like, dad
Yeah,
hears that mom is on her way up with kids and all 50 or
yeah,
100 kids get taken away out of their beds and,
yeah.
4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, it was pretty intense. But just a little bit more about like the s- foundational structure of it, if you will. So they follow the Old and the New Testament. They believe that you can't have one without the other. So um, a lot of old school traditions, with the Hebrew culture, in the Old Testament as well
Jewish
as yeah,
traditions,
and I mean Jewish, yeah, but the
Sabbath,
the
and
early days of
yeah,
of Jesus, but also in the New Testament as well with,
yeah,
like, the second coming and Book of Revelations and all that, and the apostles and,
yeah.
a lot more to it. So we lived by the Bible, and I mean the whole thing.
Except for stoning people to
I
death.
mean, yeah, that's there wasn't really
The way
murders
they
happening,
stoned
yeah.
people to death was to send them away on
Isolation.
yeah, and never be able to come back.
But, I mean, for the most part, like, our everyone always asks me what was it like growing up there, and to be honest, like, as a kid, it's kind of like an
It
ideal kid
depended
environment.
it largely depended on which family you were in and came from.
100%. Yes, it definitely did.
Yeah. So we were super lucky
We
in
were
the
lucky.
fact that we had our parents and they were awesome parents and like um family environment and bonding was important to them.
Right.
So they made sure that we did things together as a family. We went on little camping
Yeah.
trips and, little sledding trips, or they would take us on their anniversary day
Yeah.
cuz throughout the years like that became more and more frowned upon, like having quality time with your family and your kids, like we should just be serving Jesus, y'all
Which
shouldn't.
is so wild coming from, like, we support families and we believe in,
No,
like, it definitely did not turn into
no,
that
no,
long
no, no,
term. Yeah,
no. Yeah.
it's a
So
great
we were
extended
lucky
family
in that sense, but there were definitely kids and families that
with more extreme
did not
parents and
did not have it like we had it.
they also didn't have the opportunity either because I feel like especially with dad, there are and again, like a lot of this will come out like throughout the episodes, but there's an apostolic order. So there's very much like structure in the
Mhm.
religion. And your experience was a little bit different than this because you saw kind of like more of the beginning part. And I think that when I was
And
coming of
that's what I mean
age,
by
yeah.
different generations
Right. Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
environment. I very much had a totally different childhood than
Than
you
I
did,
did. Yeah.
especially like teenage years
Right.
was totally different for the two of us.
Right. Because by the
Because
time I came
they were
around,
evolving so much, and the rules were being added and changed and updated
someone
constantly.
would hear from God and it would be like taught as like a fact and a rule. But back when you were a kid, when you were like young, we are talking about homeschooling and all of that. What do you remember as far as like traditions and like the day to day routine from your memory? Because by the time that I had those memories, a lot of this had changed.
Right. So It was between Island Pond, Vermont, Nova Scotia, Canada, and Burlington. That was my education years. Island Pond, we had our training rooms in the third floor of the block. Um, that was almost traditional
Right.
because we would, get up, have our breakfast. This was before the morning and evening prayer gatherings.
Right.
So, like, we would just get up, have breakfast.
And then everyone go about their day.
Everybody would go about their day. So, like,
Interesting.
mom would get to cooking or washing or whatever she was supposed to do that day, and then me and whoever else was walking the kids to um the block,
Right.
where the training was, we would all walk together. So we'd walk to school, we'd go have school throughout the day, we'd bring our lunches or they would serve us lunch. I can't remember when. Yeah, maybe they
Yeah, no,
served
they
us
served
lunch.
you
Yeah.
lunch, yeah.
And then we walk home. In Nova Scotia, it was kind of like that. Well, no, it wasn't. We didn't really have our oldest sister,
Mhm.
Kristen, taught us here and there. And then in Burlington, that's kind of how it was too.
With
So
the classrooms.
with the
Yeah.
classroom. So there was a traditional, like,
And
s-
what was the curriculum like?
it was a mix between like whatever wholesome curriculum they could glean
They, like,
and like black
retrieved,
out
yeah.
the Halloween
Yeah.
costumes and things like that. And then they were starting to write their own
Okay.
when I was in elementary school. But the last and then we would go like in the summer. So like we would have like summer, we would go to school
Oh,
during
yeah.
the
No, no,
summer. But
school is year round. Like,
yeah,
that
but we
was
did like more camping and like we lived in Burlington, for
right.
example. And one of the PE teachers there,
Catman.
yeah, he's awesome.
Very, very close family friend.
Yeah. He taught us so many things. So camping and survival, and we rappelled off of cliffs into Lake Champlain, and he taught us how to sail. Well, Dad taught us how to sail, but canoeing, and
Yep.
it was just fun.
Packing all your gear in a canoe and
Mhm.
going out to an island and setting up camp on the island,
Yep.
like, it was yeah, it was
Yeah, and that's what we did during the summer, and then we had, like, traditional classroom settings, and it just depended on the teacher. Like, I had one teacher, she would just wanna bring us shopping, and she would, because it was a big deal. Like, if you saw
right.
kids that were not in school, she would say, "If anybody at the mall asks you, say you're homeschooled and this is a field trip."
Field trip, yeah.
Not even
Do
wait.
you realize that, like, when I was like, that would never fly if I was
Right.
like, by the time I came
Yes,
around,
yes.
no way.
So, she was rogue. She did her own thing. She's
Yeah,
not there, of course, anymore,
yeah.
but yeah, it just, it evolved, and then by the time I was 13, I
But
was
I will say,
not
like,
going to school.
but the childhood part, like, the kind of the ignorance is bliss part before you realize you're different, where you are, how isolated you are, what you don't know, like, but before that, like, before
Right.
the cognitive,
Yeah.
abilities kind of catch up, you're a kid who lives in a house with a bunch of other kids that, like
And you are taught to fear the outside world.
yes,
Like,
it is terrifying, everyone's out to
you are
get you.
walking into the
Yeah,
lake of fire if you step foot outside the door without being blessed before. I mean, not I'm exaggerating, but
right.
yes, I mean, you are taught that that is the hell out
But
there.
I'm more talking about, like, your childhood experience from the inside of being, like, a small child. Like, so you're going aside from, like, the, discipline and the weird traditions and all that stuff, it's more of, like, you go to class with your friends and you see them in the morning and it's very social. Like, it's
Well, and you live with your
right.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a small child, as, like, 4, 5,
Yeah,
6, it's
you
like,
you don't
this is the
know
best
that.
thing ever.
Yeah,
I'm on
you
a
know
field
that
trip all the
there's a
time. Yeah.
difference to what's going on in the outside world, but you don't. You're happy that you're in this environment that's safe and loving, and you're not learning. This is from being a toddler. This is
Yeah.
what you're taught.
Yeah.
So, but I do remember like the first realization that I was missing out. And it wasn't about things or dress or getting to wear makeup or anything.
Experience.
It was quiet time with my family. We
Right.
were walking in Burlington and it was snowing and it was like really quiet outside, and but you could see in people's houses because it was dark. And we were walking by these houses and there's families like gathered in the living room playing board games and there's a fireplace going.
TV, yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember thinking like I wish that we could do that as a
Right.
family and not have to worry like cuz at this point, I'm 12, I'm 13, I'm starting to be treated kind of like an adult. Like
Right.
I'm cooking meals, I'm being told, that is my conscience clear, like all that stuff. And so you're starting to kind of say, wow, this is a lot. This is a lot of pressure, right?
Right.
Like to become an adult and to be a chosen one and all these things. And so I just kind of started to long for that simplicity of having your parents and your siblings and just be living your life with your family instead of 65 other people on a daily basis.
Right. No, that would make sense.
So just that core memory of being like, yeah, maybe we're chosen and we're blessed and all these things, but you know, it's different.
Right. So when by the time I was born, 90, I was born in the what was the name of that street? We actually just went back a couple of years ago. I was born in the bathroom on the 3rd floor.
81 South William Street.
81 South William Street. So it's actually in like a college campus area
Yeah.
a little bit,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's
No,
totally
it's
different now. It's
surrounded
like
by
dorm
frat
rooms now.
houses.
Yeah, it's surrounded by frat houses. And to me, I just remember it being this like huge house and it's this huge front yard. 'Cause we
Yeah.
had like weddings in the front.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's absolutely not. It's like I think the yard is smaller than like the yard at my house now.
Yeah.
But so I was born in Burlington. We didn't stay for long. I think I was 3 when we moved. Jesse was a baby because around that time, my little brother was also born there. He's 3 years younger than me. When Jesse was 9 months old, that's when our oldest sister got married in Boston. So Kristen got married in Boston when I
Mhm.
was 3.
Mhm.
And so that our obviously family went down there and weddings there are a whole nother thing too.
Yeah.
But
That's a
yeah,
fun
so like
topic.
before coming of age, it's more of like a ignorance is bliss thing.
Yeah.
And then I think especially as it got more extreme and it's as you're growing up, like you're turning into a young adult teenager, and with that comes its own complications and its own
Exactly.
things, and identity crisis,
Crisis and
and yeah,
yeah.
you're going through hormones and all of that stuff, and then add on to that like everything else that you are almost required to step up into as you're starting to become a teenager. It becomes very challenging in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So we left Burlington and we moved to a remote little they were they starting the farm in Bellows
No,
Falls?
the farm had been going for a long time. We moved to Minden
Yeah. We were
right
on the
outside of Rutland. There was already established locations in Rutland and Bellows Falls, and for some reason, they Burlington was being dispersed.
yeah.
Like that location was no more. Like we closed up shop and all the families went to live with other people. I don't remember why. It stopped bringing in disciples.
Yeah,
Like
it was a college party town.
and
Yeah.
we were super successful.
Right.
Our
So
businesses were bringing in so much
actually, my
money.
dad had a lot of influence in the original build of the Ben& and Jerry's, the original Ben& and Jerry's in downtown Burlington. They had the contract to build their store.
That's right.
Yeah, they knew
Yeah.
the original guys.
Not
Yeah.
the original one was obviously like well before we got there.
No, I mean just like Ben he met Ben& and Jerry.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
But and they had built they were building a new
yeah,
ice
they
cream
were
shop.
in downtown Burlington,
Yeah.
which is the one still there.
Yeah, so we dispersed and moved shortly to another part of Vermont before we went to Bellows Falls.
Right.
And then
Yeah, so we all moved to a farm in and back to Vermont.
yeah.
Not Island Pond, but we were in Bellows Falls. Yeah, they had some, and how they get these properties is people like disciples that move in.
Yeah.
They evangelize to these people and they decide to join. If they have assets like this, it's not. Sometimes it's like sell your house and move in. Other times it's no, we're going to use this as a location. So
Mhm.
if they have someone join that has a really large house in a place or a really large property or whatever else, for the most part, they'll go start a community in that location and try to recruit people. So there
Recruit
was
more
a
people. Yeah.
large farm in Bellows Falls.
Was that acquired or was that bought? I thought
No,
that
it
was
was
well, it was bought with an inheritance
of somebody who
of
moved in.
somebody
Yeah.
who joined. So somebody joined and was getting like a $3 million inheritance or something. And this was late 90s,
Yeah.
mid 90s,
But
mid
that's actually
90s,
also where
early 90s.
early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
early.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's also where and again, this is all kind of like the hippie movement-ish because Aram's parents
Oh, yeah.
they lived there and they were also doing like some kind of like semi something along those lines. And so
A little
they
bit
joined. Yeah,
communal.
a little bit
Yeah,
communal.
yeah.
And I think that's how that whole thing started to begin with. But one of our brother-in-laws, that's
His
where
yeah,
his
his
family
parent his
was there.
first family
Yeah,
came
and that's
from.
actually where he met my sister, is when all of us lived in
Mhm.
Bellows Falls.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, Bellows Falls. We lived on the farm for a while. You guys were teenagers there. I was
Yeah.
not. So that was a an interesting transition for you guys.
Yep.
You're gonna have to tell us more about that.
About moving to
Just Bellows Falls and like, I mean, because right at that time, two of our sisters were interested in men, and so
men.
they
Yeah,
started
so
like being
courting.
set up,
Yeah.
courting. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, so marriages are not so much arranged, but they have to be blessed. The relationship has to be blessed even for them to date or get to know each other, court. What do they call it?
Waiting period.
The waiting period. That's what it was called. Waiting period.
This is when you're allowed to spend time with this person as a romantic interest,
Right.
escorted. You
With
are escorted all the time. There has to be another
Yeah, there has
baptized
to
adult
be
with
like
you.
a chaperone,
Yeah,
basically. But it's with the intention to marry. You don't just date to like have fun. You're dating with the intention to marry, but you have to ask for permission and it has to be blessed. And then you could be madly in love with that person. And if the people, the elders, or whoever,
doesn't
anybody could
agree with
say, I
it.
just don't
No.
think that they're
Yeah.
compatible, there would
God says no.
there would
It's
be
not God's
meetings and all
plan.
that. And they'd be like, too bad, so sad. Like you are not compatible, so move on.
Yep.
That's happened with more
That
than
happened with
a lot
my
a lot of
Sarah
people
and
that we
Aaron.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Our Tiffany got married there.
right. So
Yep.
Tiffany got married in Bellows Falls. I was 14 and turning
Yep.
15, and I was not baptized yet. So it was very
Which is
uncommon,
shocking.
right, to get past 12, 13 before you're baptized. And basically baptism at that point, this was before they started doing the bar mitzvah, the bat
The
mitzvah
coming of age
traditions.
traditions. Yeah.
Yes. But for us, baptism was really like I know that I was chosen to be here and
Right.
I was chosen for this life, but this is my acknowledgement of
I am making a choice. Yeah.
basically, yeah, accepting Jesus Christ into your heart,
Yeah.
basically. But it was like a baptism by water and, in the lake, whether it
But
was
not just Jesus in your heart, is I am accepting this as like my calling and like
and
what
my
I'm
truth
right.
and yes,
I
all
am
the
going
things.
to commit to this. It's like
Exactly.
this specifically. It's not just like
Basically
accepting
like your
Christ. Yeah.
Scientology contract for a million years. A
Yep.
billion years.
Yeah. You're fine.
Yeah, so I was creeping up on 15 and had not been baptized yet. And I don't really remember. I was just kind of a shy person in general, a kid, and I didn't have the conviction. I just
Right.
remember thinking like, yeah, this is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with because I had a great child, like we talked about
Yeah.
and um I, I didn't know why I need I don't know. I didn't know why I need to be saved or like it didn't make sense to me.
Right.
And I didn't know how to question without getting in trouble. That's obviously part of our, we didn't, you couldn't ask
You
questions.
didn't ask
That was
questions.
coming against God, basically, if you
Right.
ask questions. And so,
If you questioned his teachings, it was like a direct
Mhm.
disrespect
And
of
by him,
him,
we mean the founder. But
whoever was writing it.
it, yeah, he was mostly writing
Yeah.
them or his wife. But I just I didn't have that like they said when you are ready to be baptized, you have the pounding in your heart.
Right.
Like it's
You
like you
can't hold
feel
it
it.
in
You
anymore.
can't
Yeah.
and I just never had that. I was just kind of like, well, I'm waiting for that to happen. And then kind of did one day where we were at a baptism already and they were like,
I
is
remember
anybody
that.
else? And I was like, I got me.
Okay, so just to put a little bit of context to this. My sister was very quiet, very well
Very
behaved,
shy.
very shy, was the good kid. I mean, to the point where like my dad used to say like, "Why don't you be more like Rebecca?"
And I
And
could get away with a lot of
she
things.
well, we didn't know that at the time. Like she was just this like perfect. She was just really quiet and like minded her P's and Q's, and she was sought after by a lot of like elders for like marriage to their sons and stuff like that, because she was just like this picture of a perfect wife with her hands in her pockets and an apron in the kitchen. So Rebecca was like she was Yeah,
I was
she
the
was the good
model.
kid.
Yeah, but I wasn't getting baptized.
Right, but, like, so when I remember that
Yeah.
we were all down by the river, it was freezing in Bellows Falls, and
No,
when
it
she
was
was like,
June. It wasn't freezing.
"No?"
It
I don't
was
know.
like I
I feel
just
like it was
turned
always
15.
cold there. Okay. So it wasn't
It was
freezing
warm. I remember like that was one of the biggest reasons why I would never like try to get baptized because it
because
was
they would
always
always do it
cold.
in the ice,
Yeah, they would chop ice. I didn't
like,
want to chop ice.
dipping. But
Yeah.
I remember you just being like, "Me," and my dad was just like, "Oh my
Shocked. Yeah.
god, bring her to the front."
Yeah. So that was I had just turned 15 and then uh the whole thing with Nathan started up.
So was
Like
that, like, immediately after?
I wouldn't say immediately. I would say 5 to 6 months because he
Okay.
was in Australia. So basically
You were being set up.
I was being
Yeah.
set up, but I did like him. It wasn't like I didn't know who this person was and they were like,
She
"You're
was
going to
being
marry
set up at the
somebody."
ripe age of 15. Yeah.
Right. So a tiny little backstory without getting just so it makes sense, but basically he was living in the community in Australia. He also grew up there. He was in from another family, and he had been troubled,
Right.
very very troubled. Probably tried to leave once or twice.
Mhm.
Um, what?
Go on. You're not supposed to stop and look at me.
Oh,
Time. We gotta
sorry.
wrap it up
We're gonna
soon.
cut that out.
Editing for you.
So he was
We just
troubled.
have to come to, like, some sort of conclusion
I
so
know.
we can start the next
I know. I
subject.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was troubled. He had been sent to live in Australia to like earn his salvation back. He
Right.
did. He got rebaptized and he had expressed interest in myself. And they thought that was great because like I would help keep him on the straight and narrow and I would be this
Right.
great wife that they could probably groom into whatever, being a leader's wife. And so he was given permission to write me and ask me if but he had to ask dad first.
Right.
So it was a little bit of a setup, but I was also like, oh my God, because he was an elder's kid and he was popular and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah, so that was by the time I was turned 16 in June and we got betrothed, which is how they get engaged. We got betrothed that June, the June 22nd raid celebration weekend
I remember that.
that we had every
Yeah.
year. Got engaged and then we got married in September, the year I was turned 16. So I was
Jeez.
16 in 3 months.
Wow. Yeah. Like,
Mhm.
yeah. 16 in 3
Yeah.
months. And it was in, yeah, okay. So,
And my parents did have to sign
oh,
for
yeah.
me to get her marriage
Like,
license.
legally.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had to.
But I mean, I didn't feel like a child bride or like I felt like a mature woman,
Well, and also
but I
because
was a
there you
child bride.
100%, but also there you're groomed to when you're 12, 13, you are an adult. Like you're coming of age.
Right.
You start having responsibilities in the house. You start like you are a woman. Like it's,
Yeah.
they I would say like hit as soon as kids hit puberty, they are starting to want to groom them to be more like adults and adult roles.
Yeah, I mean, I was cooking dinner for 30 people at the
Yeah.
age of 13.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like you kind of phased out of that in that time
Yeah, because
period.
I
And
went.
was still very much like a kid. Like I was
Yeah,
8, 9, 10 years old around that time. We moved to um,
New York.
Palinville, New York. Yep, and it was in like a rundown, shitty old hotel. There was like raccoons
Oh my
coming through the
gosh, I
ceiling.
forgot about
Building.
that.
It was crazy. But yeah, so we did move around a lot as kids. And I will say that from like an ignorance is bliss standpoint, my dad really did try to do special things with us as kids, which also held him back from making it a progression in the apostolic order.
Right, because they
Yeah,
weren't always approved things.
right,
So, like you had kind of brought this up earlier, as far as the order of authority, or
right.
I guess,
Apostolic order,
yeah,
yeah,
the hierarchy of
yeah,
things. You have like the guy who started it, and then he's kind of surrounded by a core group of like main they call them apostolic
yeah,
leaders or
yeah.
whatever. And
Elders,
yeah, they're kind
yeah,
of like the main leaders in all the different maybe locations and countries. And then you have kind of like your community leader and then your household elder.
right.
And our dad was never really he was a household elder maybe once or twice, but he was
He
kind
was
of,
always in like trouble in some way
yes,
with
he was
like the
kind of always
authority.
held
Yeah,
back because he
because
didn't,
he was smart and he
he
asked
questioned.
questions.
He asked
There you go.
questions.
There you go.
And that is a theme, like, I've done a
Yeah.
lot of research on, high control
Religious
groups. That is
organization.
the theme is when people ask questions
Right. They
and
start to lose their credibility.
yeah,
Yeah. Because there's no longer that element of control because knowledge is power, right? So they
right.
don't want you to have the knowledge of, hey, maybe this doesn't sound so right, or
Mhm.
I'm going to do a little bit of research before I start. Because he actually got like chastised by the elders for
Right,
not implementing a lot of extreme disciplinary measures to us as kids.
right.
They would tell us or give a sermon to the entire population and be like, this is the new order of how we discipline our kids. And my dad would be like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not doing that to my kids. And that's a lot of times where he had a lot of resistance with them and wasn't promoted because the more religious you are and the more bought into it you are, the more that you're promoted and the higher up you get. So the people that are throwing other
Yeah, the
people
more
under the
devoted
bus,
you are, the
100%.
the more
So if you're selling out your
privilege you
friends,
get.
then you're promoted real fast. It is like it's kind
Right,
of
so
a
I
really
feel
messed
like
up.
he always did try to obey,
Right.
but if there was a
He
line
struggled
to
with
be
it.
towed, he would tow it. So they would say, "Well, we don't take vacations," but he would say, "Well, I'm gonna take the
My kids, yeah.
the bus out on on
On
a
a
test
camping
run,
trip, yeah.
yeah, to check for leaks, and we're gonna go for some hikes and,
Yeah,
have a
overnight.
campfire in while we're doing that." So, like, he did make an effort to have that family time and it not be just about, like, our purpose and working
Right.
and teaching and Bibles.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that he would get in trouble for?
Taking us on camping trips,
Yeah.
not disciplining us the way that they told like they taught they well, it would literally be like a teaching of like this
Right.
is now the rules of how you discipline your kids. This is
Mhm.
now like and they would pass these things down and some of them are a little bit extreme.
Yeah.
And he would just straight up be like and I think one of them in particular and I remember this cuz I was young. I think we lived in Bellows Falls or one of those at the time, and they started talking about other parents and other baptized adults being able to discipline your child.
Well, see, so that was a thing when I was growing up.
Right,
Anybody I could be walking down the hallway with a basket of laundry and a single brother think that I disobeyed somehow, and he could yank me off to the bathroom, whip up my skirt, and spank me on my bottom
right.
growing up.
And that was a lot of
That was totally
the
called for.
that
Yeah.
part of it was when my dad started being like,
Right.
I'm
And
not.
I
Yeah,
do, and I don't know, today's probably not the right time, or this episode is probably not the right time to tell that story, but that was also a time that I, with a spanking issue and a single brother who was a teacher when I was
right.
4 at the block.
Yeah,
I think at that point, and because I totally resisted it, and I'll tell that story, but
yeah,
I think he was like, "Okay, fine, you don't have to get spanked by single brothers
yeah.
anymore."
Jesus.
It's fine.
So that's a fun note to end on. Yeah. But we're wrapping up this episode. We still have a lot more to
Yep.
dive into. But yeah, just a little bit of our background, childhood. I mean, as you can see, we grew up in the same family. But generationally, which is weird.
Yeah.
There's only 10 years, but there it just I think it goes to show just how extreme the evolution became because
Mhm.
of your experience
Mhm.
as a kid and your
Yeah.
teenagers and all that was light years different than mine was like just 10 short years later.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So awesome.
can't wait for the next one.
Yay. Cheers.
Cheers. Well, thank you guys for listening to The Sister Act. We still have so much to uncover and hope that you join us next week for an episode about coming of age and what it means to be an adult within the religion. We also invite you to join the conversation. Drop us a comment with any questions or reach out to either of our emails listed below. We would love to hear from you.